In this video I am gonna to answer the most common question asked on YouTube about HTML. With every question I will give you a small example. If you have more question, leave it in the comments below. And if you like the video, hit the like button. If you are searching for one question, you can find all the question in description below. You can go right away to the question you are looking for. Now let us begin. How to change font size in HTML page? To change the font size of text in an HTML page, you can use the font size property in CSS, cascading style sheets. Here's an example of how you can change the font size of a paragraph element. In the external CSS file, you can define the font size for the P element like this. Note that you can adjust the font size value to your preference, such as 14px, 20px, 2em, 1.5 rem, or other units supported by CSS. You can also apply the font size property to other HTML elements, such as headings, links, and more, by targeting their respective selectors in the CSS rules. How to add an image in HTML? To add an image to an HTML page, you can use the im tag. Here's an example of how to add an image to a web page. Add an image from a file on your computer. In this example, replace image JPG with the name and extension of the image file you want to use. The src attribute specifies the URL or file path to the image, and the alt attribute provides a text description of the image for accessibility purposes. To add an image from a remote URL, you can write. In this example, replace the URL with the URL of the image you want to use. To add additional attributes to the im tag, you can write. In this example, the width and height attributes specify the size of the image in pixels. You can also add other attributes such as title, to display a tooltip, class, to apply CSS styles, and id, to reference the image in JavaScript or CSS. Make sure that the image file is saved in a format that is supported by web browsers, such as JPEG, PNG, or GIF. Also, keep in mind that large images can slow down the loading time of your web page, so it's a good practice to optimize the file size and dimensions of your images before using them on your website. How to add background image in HTML? To add a background image to an HTML page, you can use the background image property in CSS, cascading style sheets. Here's an example of how to add a background image to the body element. Note that you need to replace background JPG with the file name and path of your background image. You can also adjust other properties of the background, such as the position, repeat, and size, by using additional CSS properties like background position, background repeat, and background size. How to make button link in HTML? To make a button that acts as a link to another page or website in HTML, you can use the tag, anchor tag, and style it with CSS to look like a button. Here's an example of how to create a button link. In this example, replace https://www. Example. com with the URL of the page or website you want to link to. The href attribute specifies the URL of the link. To style the button, you can define a CSS class for the tag and add CSS properties to make it look like a button. Here's an example of how to define a button class in CSS. In this example, the button class is defined with the display property set to inline block to make it behave like a button. The background color property sets the background color of the button, color sets the text color, padding sets the spacing inside the button, border radius rounds the corners of the button, and text decoration removes the underline from the link. You can adjust the CSS properties to your liking to create different button styles. Just make sure to include the class attribute in the tag with the name of your button class. In this case, button. How to make table in HTML? To create a table in HTML, you can use the table element and its associated tags, such as tr, table row, th, table header, and td, table data. Here's an example of how to create a simple table with 2 columns and 3 rows. In this example, the table element defines the start and end of the table. The first row is a header row, defined with the tr element and its associated th tags. The th tags define the table headers for each column. The remaining rows are data rows, defined with the tr element and its associated td tags. The TD tags define the table data for each cell. You can also add additional attributes to the table and its associated tags to control the appearance and behavior of the table, such as border, cell padding, cell spacing, width, and height. For example, in this example, the border attribute adds a border around the table, the cell padding attribute adds padding to the cells, the cell spacing attribute adds space between the cells, and the width and height attributes set the dimensions of the table in pixels. How to change text color in HTML? To change the text color in HTML, you can use the CSS color property. The color property allows you to specify the color of the text, and you can use any valid CSS color value, such as a color name, a hex code, an RGB value, or an HSL value. Here is an example of how to change the color of text to red using the color property. In this example, the style attribute is used to apply the color property directly to the paragraph element. The value of the color property is set to red, which will change the color of the text to red. You can also apply the color property to a CSS class or ID selector in an external CSS file or in the head section of your HTML document. Here is an example of how to define a CSS class that changes the color of text to blue. In this example, the blue text class selector is defined in the head section of the document, and the color property is set to blue. The class is then applied to the paragraph element using the class attribute in the HTML. The result is blue text that is styled using the CSS class. You can use any valid CSS color value in the color property to change the color of text to your desired color. How to add video in HTML? To add a video to an HTML document, you can use the HTML5 video element. The video element allows you to embed video content directly in your HTML page, and provides a wide range of customization options and playback controls. Here is an example of how to add a video to an HTML page using the video element. In this example, the video element is used to embed a video file located at path/to/video MP4 into the HTML page. The controls attribute adds standard video playback controls, such as play, pause, and volume. The source element specifies the location and format of the video file, and in this case, it is an MP4 file. The text your browser does not support the video tag will be displayed if the user's browser does not support the video element. You can also add multiple source elements to the video element to provide different versions of the video in different formats, allowing the browser to choose the appropriate version based on its capabilities. Here is an example. In this example, both an MP4 and a WebM version of the video are provided, and the browser will automatically choose the best format based on its capabilities. You can also customize the appearance and behavior of the video element using CSS and JavaScript. The video element provides a wide range of options for controlling playback, displaying captions and subtitles, and more. How to link pages in HTML? To link pages in HTML, you can use the element, which stands for anchor. The element creates a hyperlink that, when clicked, takes the user to another page or a specific location within the same page. Here is an example of how to create a hyperlink to another page in your HTML document. In this example, the href attribute specifies the path to the other HTML document you want to link to, in this case, path/to/other/page. HTML. The text linked to another page is the visible text that the user will click on to follow the link. You can also link to external web pages by specifying the full URL in the href attribute, like this. In addition to linking to other HTML documents or external websites, you can also create links to specific locations within the same page. This is done by using the ID attribute to create an anchor point, and then using the href attribute to link to that anchor point. Here is an example. In this example, the h2 greater than element has an ID attribute set to section 1, which creates an anchor point at the start of the section. The element then uses the href attribute to link to that anchor point, and the text jump to section 1 is the visible text that the user will click on to jump to the section. By using the element, you can create hyperlinks that take the user to other pages, external websites, or specific locations within the same page. How to make login system in HTML? HTML alone cannot be used to create a login system, as it is a markup language used for structuring web pages. However, you can use HTML in combination with server-side languages like PHP, Node.js, or Python to create a login system. Here are the general steps to create a login system using HTML and PHP as an example. Create a login form in HTML, which should include an input for the user's username or email address, an input for their password, and a submit button. Here is an example. Second step, create a PHP script called login. PHP that will handle the form submission and authenticate the user's credentials against a database. This script should first retrieve the values of the username and password fields from the post data. Then, it should check if the user's credentials are valid by querying a database or other data source. If the credentials are valid, the script can create a session for the user and redirect them to a protected page. Here is an example. Third step, create a protected page that can only be accessed if the user is logged in. This page should check if a session exists for the user and redirect them to the login page if not. Here is an example. Fourth step, create a logout. PHP script that will end the user's session and redirect them back to the login page. Here is an example. These are the basic steps to create a login system using HTML and PHP. However, please note that this is just a simple example and there are many security considerations that must be taken into account when building a real login system. It is important to properly validate user input, securely store passwords, and protect against various types of attacks like SQL injection and cross-site scripting, XSS. How to change background color in HTML? To change the background color of an HTML page, you can use the background color property in CSS. Here is an example of how to change the background color of an HTML page using inline CSS. In this example, the background color property is applied to the body element using CSS. The value #F5F5F5 is a hexadecimal color code that represents a light gray color. You can use any valid CSS color value for the background color property, including named colors, RGB values, and HSL values. How to create a web page in HTML? To create a web page in HTML, you can follow these steps. Open a text editor or an HTML editor on your computer. Examples of text editors include Notepad, Sublime Text, or Visual Studio Code. HTML editors such as Adobe Dreamweaver or Microsoft Expression Web may provide additional features and visual editing capabilities. Start by creating a new file and saving it with a HTML file extension. For example, you could name the file mypage.html. Add the HTML boilerplate code to the file, which includes the less than doc type declaration, HTML, head, and body elements. Here is an example. Add content to your web page within the body element. This can include text, images, videos, and links. You can use HTML tags such as p, img, video, and a to structure your content and add formatting. Save your HTML file and open it in a web browser to preview your web page. You can do this by double-clicking on the file or by opening it from your browser's file menu. Once you are satisfied with your web page, you can upload it to a web server to make it publicly accessible on the internet. How to add another page in HTML? To add another page to your HTML website, you can follow these steps. Step 1. Create a new HTML file in your text editor or HTML editor. You can do this by selecting File greater than New or by pressing Ctrl+N, Windows, or Command+N, Mac. Step 2. Add the HTML boilerplate code to the new file, including the less than doc type declaration, HTML, head, and body elements. Step 3. Customize the content of the new web page by adding HTML tags within the body element. You can add headings, paragraphs, images, links, or any other content that you want. Step 4. Save the new HTML file with a descriptive name and the HTML file extension. For example, you could name it About HTML if it is an About page. Step 5. Link to the new web page from other pages on your site. You can do this by adding a hyperlink using the tag. For example, if you want a link to the About page from the home page, you could add the following code to the home page. This creates a clickable link that takes users to the About HTML file when they click on it. Step 6. Save all changes and preview your website to ensure that the links are working properly. How to make search bar in HTML? To make a basic search bar in HTML, you can use an HTML form element with an input field and a submit button. Here's an example. In this example, the action attribute specifies the URL of the search results page. The method attribute is set to get to submit the search query as a URL parameter. The label element provides a text label for the input field, and the for attribute matches the ID attribute of the input field. The input element with a type of text is used to create the search box, and its name attribute specifies the parameter name that will be sent to the server when the form is submitted. Finally, the input element with a type of submit creates a button to submit the form. When the button is clicked, the browser sends a request to the URL specified in the action attribute, with the search query as a URL parameter. How to create a login page in HTML? To create a login page in HTML, you can use a form element with input fields for the user's email or username and password. Here's an example. In this example, the action attribute specifies the URL that the form data will be submitted to, and the method attribute is set to post to submit the data as part of the request body. The two input fields are created using the input element with a type of email and password, respectively. The required attribute is added to both fields to ensure that they cannot be submitted empty. Finally, the input element with a type of submit is used to create a button to submit the form. When the button is clicked, the browser sends a request to the URL specified in the action attribute, with the form data in the request body. Note that this is just a basic example of a login form and it is not secure to store user passwords in plain text in the HTML file. In a real application, you would need to use a server-side language like PHP or Node.js to handle the login process and store passwords securely in a database.